Competition Bill 2022 was read for the first time on the 30th of November 2022. And then later on, it was referred to the Committee on Tourism, Trade and Industry for consideration. Now, the policy behind this bill is that it was meant to promote and sustain fair competition in markets in Uganda. Now, joining me today to discuss tonight's topic, which is making sense of the competition law in Uganda, the Competition Amendment Bill 2023. I'm joined by a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen that will help us demystify tonight's topic. So I am your moderator or your host today. My name is Onen Douglas Drake, and I'm very privileged and happy that this week we bring you another episode of the Inter-University Debate Interface. So allow me welcome my dear panelists for tonight's discussion. Thank you very much for honoring our invitation.
Sure.
Yeah. So briefly, I'm going to start with you, Mr. Runa. Kindly introduce yourself and tell us who you are and which university you're from, and possibly the course that you pursue for the audience to know.
Thank you so much, Drake. Dear viewers, it's a pleasure to be here again. My name is Nyombi Haruna from the Islamic University in Uganda, Kampala campus, pursuing a bachelor's degree in law. Nice to be here again.
Thank you very much. The last time we had you here, and it was a very interesting conversation.
Sure.
I hope this week again we shall have a wonderful discussion.
Sure, can't wait.
Thank you. So next to Haruna is a wonderful lady who fights for the rights of women. She goes by the name Belinda Manya. Anyways, she will tell us about herself, the institution she goes to, the course or program she offers, and we're very happy to have you, Belinda. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Belinda Amanya. I am a law student at Gulu University, outgoing vice guild president, and currently, I must say, I am a member of the EU Youth Sounding Board, Uganda. I'm humbled to be here. Thank you.
Congratulations on your is it appointment?
Yes.
On the appointment on the board, the EU board.
Thank you.
Very, very huge congratulations to you there. And I hope by this time you possibly have an actually name by the fact that you
Oh yes, my actually name is Lamaro.
Lamaro. Lamaro means love. Yeah. Someone who loves people.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Interesting. Right next to Belinda, we have a gentleman who has appeared a couple of times on this show, and he's an economist. He'd introduce himself. He's I would really want to pronounce his name. His name sounds interesting. Baluku Derek.
Sure.
Baluku, please introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Baluku Derek. I am also from Akio University. I really must say that I am very happy to be here among these very distinguished people. I can't wait to hear what they have to say and really learn from them.
Thank you. As I've had it done there from our esteemed panelists, definitely when you hear their introduction and what they do, it gives you an insight that they definitely know what they're going to discuss today. So now that leaves me itching on my seat and wondering what exactly we're going to have. So that said, let's have Mr. Nyombi Haruna start for us tonight's conversation. You see, in the month of November, on 30th, 2022, this particular bill was read for the first time. And the policy behind this particular bill or this particular law, which has not yet been assented to by the president, is to go ahead and promote and sustain fair competition. But before we go into the nitty-gritties behind the policy, kindly put for us in context in terms of historical background what this particular competition bill is all about. For someone who is listening to this for the first time, they would definitely want to know where it comes from. Nyombi.
Thank you so much, Drake. Our viewers should know that in this world, when we were created in this world, man was made to do things the way they wanted to do them for their satisfaction. Unfortunately, or fortunately, many of us are self-centered. And so around, during the Roman Empire, people had started engaging in business, where we had the common people, the guilds, who were acting on behalf of the government.
True.
So you would find that there was some antagonism, where these people, the commoners, would produce, and almost even the other guilds almost did the same activities that the common people were doing. And therefore, because the guilds had connection with the government, so in one way or the other, they would try to create a cartel in a way that they would always dominate the marketplaces, and therefore these people did not have ways on how to sell their goods. That resulted into cheating because they had nowhere to offer those goods to take those goods to. And so they would be only left with going by what the other ones wished. So there was no competition, or rather there was there should have been a competition if there was a leveled ground, but there was unfairness because there was no level ground in that kind of society. So it went on like that until there were agitations to bring about a balance in that kind of society. So that's when they brought about these competition laws. We call them trust busting laws.
Yeah.
Basically, to bring about competition in society, and as far as trade is concerned, so that if Drake is producing something and I'm also producing the same thing, there should be fairness at the marketplace where we are taking this good in terms of prices, so that you do not exploit either exploiting the consumers or
Some producers.
producers, especially those ones who are not at a level at an added advantage like yours. That's when now these laws have been developing. In 1945, before even the 1945, okay, 1945, 1945, 1947, and even up to 1994 when we had the World Trade Organization put in place. So that all these countries went from societies to now even countries. Let's say a country like Uganda, how competitively can you participate in the world market if you're taking your goods with other countries, let's say the US, China, or others? So besides that, I think 1945 and 1944, there were some charters that were developed. But at the climax of it, I think it came to 1997 when we had the World Trade Organization that enabled countries to set up legal regimes to help that we have this anti-competition competition laws. And I think China was amongst them. I think China in 2008, that's when they developed this competition laws. They enacted their competition laws. Other countries went on like that. Here in East Africa, I think the only 3 countries that so far that have these competition laws. Rwanda, theirs I think it's either 2010 or 2012. We have Kenya, Tanzania as well. So in Uganda, we are just yet to enact such a bill. Good enough, we have the bill in place at the moment.
Thank you. So from that point, allow me to engage with you, Belinda. When you listen to the historical perspective that my brother Nyombi brings into tonight's conversation, I can't bear but to wonder and ask you, is this law long overdue? Maybe you answer that, because we've seen countries like Kenya, as you said, going ahead to enact this law in the year 2010. Countries like Rwanda, they have a board that governs the issue of competition. So maybe as you give your introductory remark and your introduction, I want us to address the perspective. Was this law long overdue? Because I know the defects that this law is trying to address. You could maybe look at it from that angle. Belinda.
Thank you, Drake. If it is to address the question of is it long overdue, my response would really be yes. I think it has delayed to come into place. Because my view on the historical background or where we really come from is, for example, when I remember the little economics I studied in A-level and probably some bit of the law we also study, when we have had freedom to contract and then laissez-faire markets where everything has been open for everybody to come and indulge into the whole issue, probably economy or production, where when the doors were opened, when we had freedom to all contract, freedom to all get into production and sales and business and etc. from there, it was evident that, when a door is opened, not everybody gets equal opportunities or equal chances. So from the onset there, I believe these things are already coming out. Even for Uganda alone as a country, I believe this was some of the things that started to come out to pick out. Because when I was listening to probably the different MPs on the floor giving their views on the bill, on the competition bill, and some of the things were like, probably some government agencies, for example, the army is not taxed, and if they're going to be contracted, then they have an upper hand than the other people. So it is not fair play. So to me, if I'm to look at its entire background, I'm going to say from inception of making markets free, laissez-faire and open, and contracts free and open to everybody, I believe the problem started there because we were all at different levels coming in, and everybody has their own interests. Different people want to either put in cartels. I know a man who knows someone, as you hear today in Uganda, you want to do something and someone tells you, I know a man who can do it at a cheaper cost, or I know someone who can do it in such and such a way. And so with all those things, either someone has an upper hand or someone has this, and sometimes it is not just, it is on injustice, on an imbalanced kind of ground, and therefore leading us to saying, oh, I think it is high time we thank our members of parliament and whoever thought about this bill and starting to come out and protect these kind of people that are in this sector and see that they get fair competition. Let us all compete, but in a space which is fair, exactly, and not toxic with, different people having different upper hands and the other not balanced. So that would be my take on that.
Thank you. Wonderful submission. My brother Derek, you are an economist. When you listen to Belinda and my brother Nyombi's submission, you get the feel that my brother Nyombi gives us an historical perspective. This started way back. Yeah, that in Uganda, what were we thinking? Yeah, what were we thinking that we have just thought about it recently? I know for the first time this law was introduced in Parliament in the year 1998, and nothing happened. Until recently, the year 2022 is when it was read for the first time in November. Now, in the absence of this legislation, we had bodies or sectors like Bank of Uganda, like Uganda Communication Commission, that were acting as regulatory bodies on unfair pricing, among others. Now, those particular bodies, remember, the laws that they have does not apply to all the other parts of the country, all the other organs. It's specifically to their particular sector. Now, the absence of that law definitely poses threats in the market. Now, the kind of threats that it poses in the market, remember, Uganda has a free market economy, right?
Definitely.
Now, this poses a situation where people who have an upper hand, as Belinda puts it, go ahead and fix prices, go ahead and cheat the consumers, among others. Now, from an economics perspective, putting in mind that Uganda's economy is entirely free market economy.
Yes.
And now, speak to the local man that how will this law benefit them?
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so I want to be on record for saying that over the years, a free market economy has been proved to be the best economic model that any country can use to advance its economic growth, whereby it's the market forces of demand and supply that determine the allocation of goods and services. Yeah, so with the free market economy, you realize that it's private individuals that come, set up businesses, and then the forces of demand and supply will try to, to play out. But then in this whole playing out, there must be a government which always comes in to say, let's say, for example, provide a favorable condition or a favorable environment for the better working of economic players. For example, the government can do well with providing peace and security, and then also building infrastructures, and then also the part of legislation or regulation. So I think the competition law is very important. I'll bring it to the lower level. I want to, of recent, I've had a lot of challenges with telecom companies, the likes of MTN and Airtel. So these guys operate what we call monopolies. They dominate the sector in a way that they even set the prices that all other telecom companies have to follow. Yeah. So this in itself is detrimental to the consumer in a way that if you can't afford, okay, in a way that these guys are going to set very higher prices, which people are not going to be able to afford. And also it has really negative effects to other producers, because when these guys are setting prices, okay, they will come and say, let's say they put airtime at 1,000. Other producers are not going to be able to also put their prices at that level. So at the end of the day, they will be pushed to get out of the market. Yeah. So I think really this law.
Before you go further, so does that mean what happened with AfriCell was something related to that, because price fixing has been a challenge?
Definitely, because okay, how prices come about is someone will calculate their costs of operating.
Yeah.
So if your costs of operation are very high, that means okay, your price must be a bit higher than your costs, so that you can get profits out of the business. But then if your profits are not higher than the cost, then that means you're going to get out of the business. So when these guys come up and set prices that are higher, then that means these guys won't be able to.
And yet they even have more buy-in than the rest. So it becomes a bit imbalanced.
Yes. So I think it is a good law to regulate, economic players so that they can protect both producers and consumers.
Okay. Yes. Belinda, his last statements, good law to protect both consumers and producers. Now, my question to you is, he highlights a defect that this law is trying to address, a defect of price fixing, a defect of market sharing, which he has given us an example of a company that we all know, a telecommunication company that we all know that possibly fix prices and share the market together. When I was reading my timeline on Twitter, someone said nowadays, that company and the other one are more like the same, because their prices are up there and you can do nothing about it.
Nothing.
Now, the question to you is, how will this Competition Amendment Bill 2022 impact businesses and consumers?
Well, one, I would like to say that for those who have been unfairly earning and benefiting, it is going to be a huge kind of like slap in the face, because, when everything comes, if you've been here at an imbalanced kind of like state, there's been like a platform raised for you which others do not have, and therefore you're up. When everything goes back to normal, you automatically have to have a setback. So I'd like to say on their side, it may be detrimental, but however, on the side of people who had been cheated, perhaps it's a time for them to revamp and say it's becoming a safe space, as we normally use the word, as we normally use the term safe space. I think it becomes a little bit easy for them to play in, because sometimes you get to listen to people who are telling you, oh, would like to supply, let's say, Parliament with this, or would like to support this government entity with this. However, it is not kind of leveled, because themselves, the parliamentarians, probably have their own businesses which are targeted and strategically put to supply these specific things. And theirs are probably operating at costs which are a bit low, probably they're not even paying taxes, or maybe like there are always those benefits that are underlying for them. But however, if it's going to be opened and say, be it a government entity, be it private, be it, as long as it is like you people are all doing the same thing, then you deserve the same ground, the same leveled ground. And I think that is going to help different people in business to also come up, and it's also going to boost our economy, because if you're only depending from a certain group of people who are also should I say egocentric or selfish in their own nature, not allowing in others, it has still been hurting our economy, because we do not get the full package because someone is only using it on their own side. So here I see it broadening entry points for these other people, giving them fair play. And then to the consumers, people were being cheated for a long time, and Omuntu Wawansi, exactly, and Omuntu Wawansi doesn't have what to say. Recently, for those that use the route to my home, the Western Road, this would go to Western Uganda, when Tausi coaches came in, for example, when Global Buses had put its standard somewhere. And so when Tausi comes in and says, okay, if there are people put it at 30, it is 25,000, and our buses are new and they move faster. And so now you see that there it starts to be. I felt it was a bit fair competition
Yeah.
because
Definitely, yes.
these are new in the game. They are coming in. They're trying to also boost their sales. And like for example, the example you gave us of, let's say, Africell and maybe MTN and Airtel. This people already have the kind of like buy-in in society. They have the numbers, and so even though they put theirs high, it does not really affect them. But you're growing. You're coming in. You're new on ground. When you really try to hike in, you make losses. People are not going to come and react to you. So you have to either go low and then it's going to affect you, and at the end of the day you're kicked out. The monopolies have it and you are at the back. So I would like to say it's going to favor the consumers because there's variety, there's an open door, the prices are a bit leveled and moderate for you to take in and be able to afford as an average Ugandan. And also to these other people who the producers, I must say it's going to be a safe space and equal level for them. And then also to the government, I believe our economy is still going to be boosted and we are going to see more returns
people.
coming in. Yeah, and more people coming in. That is what I would say about it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Belinda. You address the benefits that this particular competition bill yet to become law will definitely have on not only the businesses, but on the consumers. Haruna, when you were earlier on giving us your historical introduction and perspective, I couldn't sit here and just wonder that from all the time that Uganda has been into existence, we are coming to 60, 64 years. And we have our neighbors in Kenya who passed this law in the year 2010. We have countries like Tanzania and other African countries as well. Now, we are talking about East African, we're talking about East African integration. We're talking about economic integration. And you're a student of law yourself. I don't know if you read Article 21 of the Protocol of the Establishment of the East African Community and other economic entities. It talks about the aspect of countries should go ahead and come up with laws that hinders unfair competition. Yeah. Now, Uganda, after this law was in the year 2006, that was when we were party to a number of these international instruments. Now, I want you to talk about economic integration. How will this law drive us to an angle of economic integration? Because we find that in the East African Community Act, it also, inside the law, it talks about unfair competition, that member countries should come up with laws that address unfair competition. Even countries among COMESA have the laws that talk about that. So how will this drive us towards the aspect of economic integration?
Before we talk about this, if I get that question, they will bring up some critical points here. Uganda, first of all, is a growing economy.
Yes.
As you may be aware. We are having a lot of people who are unemployed. And basically, we are just growing. And therefore, you would realize that most of the players, those that would call the big players in the economy here, probably they are multinational companies. They come from outside, the likes of MTN. Even when you go to the banking sector, we do not have our own bank that is bigger than those that are from outside. So they have a bigger position to dominate our market here.
They have more capital.
That means when we are when this law tries to regulate, bring about some kind of equality in the economy, so that if Drake comes out, you are, as the native, you come out to start up a business, you can be able to compete with the other multinational companies, but it could not even be multinational companies, even in countries. Now you're having a country like China, their citizens have they have advantages over us in terms of credit. So they will manufacture their goods from China, then they come and dump them here. You'd find if there are companies here, they will realize, okay, Drake has got limited capital. Let me join my my capital in form of a merger with that of Belinda, so that we outcompete. So we'll find people are being pushed away from the market because of this unfair business practices. So that's what the law is trying to address. Now back to your question of East African community, together with this law, if you're trying to put it in line with the law here. The bill in itself, like I said earlier on, that it arose out of the World Trade Organization,
Yeah.
where different countries came in place, came together uh, to ensure that there are better laws that regulate trade amongst those countries.
Yeah.
Let's say if Uganda is trading with China, it, even though China is at an added advantage, but that position should not be used against Uganda, because I'm a weaker country in terms of finances. Therefore, these laws try to regulate. Therefore, when you look at the bill itself, you have your own laws, but they should not be used to the disadvantage of these other countries. In other words, there must always be harmonization.
Yeah.
In terms of trade. It should be a fair game, whether I'm trading with you or another person, as long as we are all in the same business as countries. Recently, I think it could have been Kenya, where Ugandan products are being denied to get there, to go to Kenya. Products, I think
Maize.
eggs, maize, for some reason. But we realize there must be laws that have to regulate such practices. If you're denying my goods from entering Kenya, it should be the rationale should be justifiable. If it's quality, yes, we come together and all agree this is the quality that we all need. Even in terms of prices, countries have to sit together and determine. And so, okay, if we are in the East African community, goods, let's say in terms of maize, when you're producing maize and the other side they're also producing maize, the prices should not take advantage of the others because it's a weaker country. Like now, you all know very well that Kenya is far better than almost all these African countries in terms of the economy. The economy is up there, is a little bit bigger than
It's the biggest
ours.
economy in East
It
Africa.
is the biggest economy in East Africa. And therefore, they should not use that position to dictate on the prices of products from Uganda, or even what we are producing here in terms of quality. Basically, everything must be done fairly. That means it calls for all of us to come together as the regional bodies that are responsible in terms of trade regulation. Unfortunately, we do not have a body here in Uganda that is regulated, except the Ministry of Trade. But this bill is going to help us to have a body that is putting in place all these mechanisms that we require so that we have a fair competition with producers from different countries within the East African community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Baluku, the goals of this particular law, allow me with verbatim. I have two that caught my eye. The first goal is to control anti-competitive behaviors that farms has a negative impact on the competition in Uganda's market. Two, to encourage and maintain market competition, safeguard the interests of consumers and safeguard market freedom in the markets in Uganda. My brother Nyumbi was talking about the economic integration. And that is something that we want to realize as East Africa and one day as Africa. And you realize that one of the challenges in realizing the East African integration has been on grounds of income inequality, or what other people put as our economies are very unequal. So it would be very hard to have an integrated East Africa. So does this law put us a step closer to the East, to us realizing the East African integration?
Yeah, so if you realize in that very law, it addresses two components. There could be four, but then one of them is the issue of monopoly, and then the one of mergers. So the issue of monopoly, as we've highlighted with previous discussions, for example, telecom companies, when monopolies come about, they set prices. And when they set prices, this really hurts consumers. Because some people cannot consume something, this is going to really affect their way of living or their standards of living. It also puts the cost of living high. Yeah. So this in itself creates a situation whereby there are income inequalities, because you realize, let's say, people that are working in the in those companies are getting two-way higher profits than people that, let's say, the consumers.
Yeah.
So that brings about the income inequalities. So and then another issue that I want to highlight is the issue of protection of domestic companies or domestic factories. For example, he talked about the multinationals. You realize that when multinational companies come here, they already have their capital. Yeah. So for the fact that they have capital, they're going to produce, very good products. And they can also suggest mergers to, to smaller companies here. So, you'll also agree with me that these companies usually repatriate most of their profits that they make here. You'll find out that, let's say, a South African company, if it makes the profits here, it will take all the profits to South Africa. So at the end of the day, Ugandans really benefit less from such. So I think this law, when it addresses the issues of mergers and then monopolies, I think that's a good thing to start with, to create a leveled ground, as Belinda was putting it, for economic players to to thrive, and even Ugandans to thrive.
So is it one step close?
Definitely, it's a good one.
Thank you. Belinda, you're a lawyer, or a lawyer to be.
Yes.
And definitely we can't have such a conversation and not talk about the compliance of the Competition Bill with human rights. You earlier on mentioned that leveled ground. So that, in my mind, brings up the aspect of anti-competition in line with discrimination. So speak to the heart of this particular law or bill compliance with human rights.
Well, if we're to really bring in the concept of human rights, to me it may just be, because if you look at human rights, and everybody deserves equal opportunities and equal rights for them to thrive and live in a conducive environment. So I'd like to say we are having human rights brought in the economic kind of like perspective, where we are saying each and everybody needs the same opportunities. This, like, exactly as we were basically putting it out, we all need a leveled ground for all of us to come in and play it in the way. If it doesn't favor you, if you fail to thrive, do not come and say I was discriminated because, let's say, I did not have enough capital, or maybe this was the problem, or these people were highly favored and I wasn't. But here the door is open for all of you. If you're all thriving, you're all thriving with the terms that are put and outright to everybody. So I feel just like that. It's, yes, if you're to bring in human rights, I would like to say it is, we are having, should we call them economic rights, but open for each and everybody, each and every economic player.
The aspect of freedom of expression and discrimination, does that come out in this particular law?
True, I think it comes out.
Yeah. How?
Because when you look at freedom of expression and what was the other you said?
Again, it's freedom of expression and not being discriminated.
Exactly, and not being discriminated. I think it tackles that, because earlier, pardon?
It's Article 21, I think.
Yes. Earlier, as I had mentioned, on the views I was listening to the different parliamentarians that they were giving, that probably some entities are highly favored, they're not taxed. When you look at the army and their produces, they're not taxed. Therefore, if I'm buying, let's say, a bottle of Uzima at 500 shillings and I'm buying Renzori at 1,000 shillings, yet it is all water. These people have an upper hand because this and this is coming in. Or maybe I'm discriminated because I'm not given these tax exemptions and etc, etc. But then with this law coming into place, and we are believing it's really going to be followed, because we have always had issues of laws being there but not really actually being followed. But if it is going to be smartly brought out as the reviews and as the concept is from inception, then we believe it's going to be fair play. It's going to be a ground without discriminating on this one. Probably you're closer to the deciding table, therefore you get more kind of like more opportunities than the rest. But here it is that everything is open and you all thrive on your own, and when you make it, but without grounds of, oh, I was discriminated, or the one had a better hand, this one was connected, this one is more of government, what. So I feel it is a better space, and it would open more opportunities. Because one, as we're talking about getting close to the economic integration with the ESC, I'd like to say, well, we were not yet organized. How are we joining people that were already organized with our dirty hands? Where do we start from? But if we are saying we are organizing our house and trying to put these things into place, then I think we're able to resolve our differences and be able to go on a board of other people and be able to deliver and advocate for our rights and advocate for better positions for our Ugandan products and Ugandan economy on a larger scale. Yeah.
Thank you. Nyombi, from the submissions of my brother Derek here and Belinda, you get the feel that he says that we are one step close to the aspect of realizing economic integration. And Belinda in her submission says that, yeah, this bill it's compliant with human rights. Now, we have all this in place, that we know this particular law is for the people. Now, for someone who is watching us who is not a lawyer, not an economist, how best would you put this law? How best will it benefit that person who will not have time to read this law but want to feel the impact?
Drake may not be in a position to distinguish ourselves from the law, but basically, we shall talk about equity, because equity is basically fairness and natural justice. From the legal perspective first, our constitution, like Belinda first of all talked about fair equality. That's Article 21. Then we go to Article 40 as well. People have economic rights. You have a right to trade. So that must not be taken away from you simply because you are not a major player in the market. That's one. So when you're trying to bring about equity, we are trying to bring about a leveled ground. What I'm happy about is that when this bill was brought up, there were some things, some sections that were inconsistent with the articles that I've talked about, equality and of course the right to trade. You realize that the movers of this bill, basically the ministry, they were like, government entities must be spared so that this bill does not affect them. But these are the same people operating in the same environment like we do.
With the rest.
She talked about the Uzima water. We all know very well that this is a product from NEC, and NEC is an entity within the UPDF. UPDF is a government entity. Therefore, you cannot compete. Haruna, if I'm trying to produce a bottle of water, I may not be at the same level with Uzima, UPDF or NEC, because they receive funding from the government, maybe even land, all the resources. You would even realize that the salaries of their employees would come from the consolidated fund. Apart from the NEC, even public universities. So they may not be at the same level with the private entities. And therefore, the Committee of Trade advised, I was like, no, if you are trying to create competition, fair competition, using this bill, let it not be exception to these other entities, especially the government entities. So for a few circumstances where we are talking about security, because that cannot be left to other people. But there are some basic things that even the private individuals are engaging in, and therefore you cannot say, since you're a government entity, you should not you should not be affected by this bill. I'm happy that was taken away through the recommendations of the Committee on Trade, that this bill should apply generally, whether it's a government entity or it is not a government entity. Basically, what a common person should know, that is bring about equity, fairness for all players, whether you're a big player in the market or you're just a startup. Like I told you earlier on, that we are growing economy, we are having a lot of innovations from the young people. And therefore, if these young people cannot be given a place to operate, simply because there are others who are already there. They are manufacturing, they have a lot of money. And so we may not be able if this bill is not put in place. So it's going to help basically the common people who are trying to start up, who are putting up innovations to be able to compete with those who are already there in the market, whether you're a big company or you've been there for a long time or you're supported by government, you'll be able to to do the same thing, to be subjected to the same law, the same policies, and even the same thing that you're supposed to follow as people in the same
Game.
In the same game. Yeah. So the rules of the game will apply to each and every person.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. In this half of the show, we have talked about the niceness of this law, and we have brought out the real intent of the real intent of this law and what defects it's really trying to solve. We talk about defects like price fixing. We talk about things like market sharing. Talk about things like abuse of the dominant position. Now, all those are defects that this particular law is trying to address. But now the question that we're going to answer in the second half of our conversation is the issue of implementation.
Definitely.
Issue of applicability. Now that is something that as a nation we have had issues with. That we have laws, very good laws, but in the end fail to apply them. So there you've heard it from our panelists. Thank you very much for this very wonderful half of the show. We shall go for a short break and then come back in the other half of the show and talk about the implementation part and the applicability of this law. Stay with us. Thank you.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Thank you and welcome back from that break. Joining me here, as I earlier on introduced, is a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Haruna Nyombi from Islamic University in Uganda, Miss Belinda Amanya from Gulu University, and Mr. Baluku Derek from Makerere University. Thank you very much. The topic today, as we earlier on talked about, is making sense of this competition law or bill, as we would want to put it. Now, in the first half of our conversation, we talked about the defects that this law is to address. Defects such as price fixing, defects such as market sharing, abuse of dominant position, among others. Now, all those are defects that this law is to address. We all know that earlier on in this country, we didn't have a specific legislation, but it was key sectors like Bank of Uganda, Uganda Communication Commission, Electricity Regulatory Authority that had some sort of competition laws that would only work in a particular sector of that area, which wasn't enough. And that is why it called for us to come up with this law. So that is the conversation we had in the first half. Now let's talk about implementation. Let's talk about applicability. So right before we went into the break, the conversation was with my brother Haruna. Now I want to bring it to you, Miss Belinda, and then I come to my brother Baluku. Implementation. Now that's where my worry is. You know, as this country, we have 1,000 good laws. We speak, you know, if at all you go for those conferences and they talk about these laws when they're doing the perfect. They just make you feel like, yes, we're heading to the right direction.
We have it in our hands.
But then when it's passed and the aspect of implementation comes in. Speak first to the issue of the challenges that this particular bill is to face.
One, when we talk about implementation, what comes to my mind is, are we ready? Are the beneficiaries ready to let go?
Yeah.
Because there is, yes, it being there, but are they ready to say we are giving in, or they still want to fight for what they've been having? And which I feel is really going to come out strong. We are soon going to have court issues, what, these ones are appealing for these ones are coming out to seek for their rights on this. I feel that is what we are now, that is the phase that is going to come up when we go to implementation. Because the open secret is there is a group that has been enjoying, earning, and benefiting from this kind of unfairness that has been there. But at a point where they're told it is time to let go, it is time to, come out of that comfort zone and be a Jesus and die and sacrifice yourself for all the rest so that they can all have fair play in the game. I feel there's a lot of backlash. And my thinking is, I do not know whether some of these people or all of them are ready to let go and buy into this. So I feel there's going to be a lot of backlash from the other side, and also helping, because another open secret is that we may all want fair ground, but even though we want fair ground, we are all not at the same levels.
That's the
If we
reality.
look at capital and what, like, nature in its way, it is totally imbalanced at whatever cost. So even though we are trying to bring in a balanced kind of like platform, I don't think it will automatically 100% remove the imbalance, because some imbalances are, should I say, natural, or they already exist and cannot probably be easily removed. However, it's going to be reduced, and the competition is somehow going to be made fair. But on the point of implementation, it goes on two sides. Even when they have, let's say it has thrived and gone through and they have accepted, are you, as Omuntu Wawansi, who is there, who has been saying, oh, welcome, thank you, Lord, this has come, are you ready to compete with all the other people? Are you ready? Do you have what it takes to thrive in such a free and fair economy and free and fair space? And are they also ready to let go? That is what definitely comes to my mind when you think about that.
Baluku. Belinda says, are the people ready to let go? Are the Omuntu Wawansi ready to actually take on this? Personally, I have my own reservations on capitalism. That the urge that is driven by our producers to make tremendous profit at the expense of the consumer, it is what produces people, it's what pushes people, or what pushes producers to work so hard. So that means they definitely have to push themselves to the wall, and whatever cost, at the expense of the consumer. Now, let me give you this hypothetical example. You have a very big multi-million company that possibly produces water, yes? And you have a one-on-end Drake who possibly went and borrowed money from, I don't know whether our development bank functions. I went and borrowed money from UDB, and I established a small plant that manufactures water. And we have these key players over in Zori, Zima. Right now we have Yaket.
Oh yeah. And ice water.
Competition is good, but how will this law, will it really benefit me? Shall it reach a point that because I've established my plan, will I succeed in that field? Because the implementation challenge it's enormous.
Okay, so about the issue of implementation, as you guys have mentioned, implementation is really a very big challenge. For example, you can even look at the number of policies that we have, the parish development model, the laws, the very good laws that we have. These are very nice laws, but then the implementation bit of it is a bit problematic. For example, I've seen in this very law, where there are parts of creating an independent body to oversee
the implementation.
to oversee the implementation. I think this is a good thing, to create a self-sufficient body which is not going to work on whims of any other entity.
They have no attachments.
Yeah, no attachments to any. However, that also in an economics perspective is a bit problematic, because here we are talking about reducing our expenditures as a country.
Yeah.
There are talks of saving as a country, and then this is where we are creating other. It's a bit problematic.
Yeah.
However, I am curious to see how it is going to play out. But then, in the sense where you asked your question, I think it is going to create a really good competition, because, like it or not, for a capitalist system, this is what produces results over the time, because, you know, there need not to be too much government intervention. You know, you have to leave the private people or the private sector. You have to leave the forces of demand and supply to determine the prices and the allocation of goods and services. Yeah, so I think more generally, the law is really good, but then we have to watch out more for the implementation bit of it.
Speaking about watching out for the implementation, talk about political interference, because that is something that runs our country.
That's where the main problem is.
Like, there is a lot, like, even in sectors whereby you need less or no political interference at all, you have the political interference coming in. So maybe you can speak to that. That is a problem, I guess, this implementing this law is going to face.
Yeah, the political interference bit of it. For example, I've told you the issue of creating a self-sustaining body. Yeah,
Is it possible?
I don't know.
We are waiting to see.
Yeah,
Waiting to be
we are all
amazed.
curious to see what really happens, because this is in a good, this is in good spirit, creating something which is self-sustaining,
True.
yeah, which is independent of all the other bodies to just oversee the implementation of the law. I think it's a good thing in itself, but then also in the other economic sense of reducing our expenditures and then saving. So I am curious to see what we do.
All right. No, you may be coming, but let me ask a question.
Yeah.
You know, our budget of the financial year 2023-2024, a huge chunk of it was allocated for payment of debts. Yeah. And here we are assenting to a number of laws that require resources for implementation. We do not know where we're going to get the money from, but we have a good law. Yes, we have a good law.
Yeah.
So we have a challenge of lack of resources now, and that's a challenge you're going to face in the implementation. Kindly speak to us about that issue of lack of resources vis-a-vis the idea that we are having a very huge debt burden as a country.
In fact, when this bill was brought to, when it was presented to cabinet, before it was brought to parliament, first, for them, their argument was, let's have, in fact, when you read the bill, their argument as to why they have, for them, they argue, they suggest that there must be a minister who is going to appoint maybe a technical committee therein. So the Committee of Trade looked into this and says, no, please. What you asked him about the political interference
started there.
When you read I think Professor Loka Onyango's book, talks about the ghosts of the law. And he says, when he's talking about the ghosts of the law, the political question doctrine has to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Unless you address the political question doctrine, these laws will not be able to be implemented. Therefore, it was the challenge that we had with the bill itself here that we are having in place. But the recommendations that were made by the Committee on Trade were in respect to what he has said. That instead of having a minister who is appointing a technical committee to overrun this, and at the same time the committee is the one to advise the minister on these very policies and how even they are supposed to be implemented, let's have a statutory body in place. This body, like any others, I think you will agree with me that these statutory bodies, for example, the National Drug Authority, all the other agencies, the UCC, all those ones, when you look at their way of operation, it's quite different from the mother ministries. I don't know that you can agree with me on that. To some extent, you realize they're doing some good job, because in as much as there are some things that are lacking in terms of appointment, maybe of the heads of these departments, you realize, because there is interference in appointment, but most of the staff, and it's based on merit and the skills of these persons. Unlike in the ministries, take for example, if a minister is any person is appointed to be a minister of trade, if this person has got no knowledge about what is happening in the country in terms of trade here, would you allow this person again to appoint people? Because first of all, he must be knowledgeable of what is happening at the ground in terms of trade and competition. So the same person is expected to appoint people on that technical committee to oversee that this bill is being implemented. Now the committee is like, please, let's have a statutory body in place. We have an executive director who is knowledgeable and skilled in this area, in this particular area. This person, we are going to have staff. This statutory body, in fact, they even suggested that there should be a tribunal to ensure that if there arise any disputes, as far as unfair competition is concerned, we should not go to the commercial court or to these other courts of law. We should go direct to this competition tribunal.
Don't you think that already is causing more expenditure?
Well, it comes at a cost, but in one way or the other, it is going to save us. Apparently, yes, we do not have this tribunal in place, or we do not have a special court to address matters of competition. But you must be aware that there is a case backlog. And recently, I had over 8 trillion.
How sure are we? How sure are we that even those bodies are going to implement?
Now, this is a shortest way. We leave the other courts attend to the general matters. If you're having a tribunal that is particularly addressing matters to do with the competition, this will be solved in a very short period of time, other than going to the general courts or even the commercial court. Apparently, there are cases, commercial cases, that have been there for over 10 years, and we are told over 8 trillion is
it's seated there.
Because these cases have not been dispensed of.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Belinda, my brother Nyombi Haruna is very optimistic. And I like your optimism, brother. You talk about having these bodies that we will have to appoint technical persons.
Yeah.
Right? Uganda here, there is what they call that Runyankore word, Gambano. Belinda.
Yeah.
Corruption.
Wow. So, well, first of all, to start from where he was, from what he was talking about, I'd like to somehow disassociate, because I feel I don't think to dissent from what you said. I still feel when we go to the funding of this, and it's the practical bit, because the uttermost truth is that very good idea, brilliant. But at what cost are we going to have it? We still have other crucial pending things, because why aren't we having this funding? And here we are saying we need this, even though it looks shorter, it still needs funding, and it's still now more funding. So it puzzles me somehow. And I look at my country and cry for Uganda and say, oh, Uganda, Lord, help us, because we don't know where this funding is probably going to come from. But it's also good to keep optimistic. Never know, we could have something work out for us as Ugandans. Something always works out for us. And perhaps we could have funding. Something always works out for us. And perhaps we could have it. But now when we go to the other side of how corruption has infiltrated the systems, when you talk of Gamba Nogo, even when systems are clear and have tried to be rectified, there is always that thing that comes creeping in. Where someone will tell you, even though the law is this, it is okay. Me, I know where to cut the line from. I know where to chip in, or I can make a phone call here. And it is until, and I don't think there's anything that can regulate that until we get to, should I say persons or individuals as individuals? Because you'll see systems, the systems are straight, you have to go through this, then this to get here. But with a phone call, someone tells you, you want this? No, you're making a line and someone is just making a phone call. Hello, I am here at your office. You see, I told you about this and this. How do I cut the line? So we always still feel that even when we have tried to fight corruption, it is still evident, it is still playing. Even when good things come in, we still feel there is someone who will be coming in. We're talking about the politics part of it. For example, I am a minister or I'm an MP, and my entity has been a service provider here and has been benefiting. Do not think it is. That's why I said, are we really ready to let go? Because because we've been earning from it. I mean, even when it happens, probably the minister or the person who has been appointed here is a good associate of yours, and you could probably say, hi man, yes, I know all this has been worked on, implementation and etc. But I need to pass here, I need this to be done. Could you put me through? So I still feel, I don't want to sound too pessimistic about the country in which we live, but that is like reality that we are living with in Uganda. And till when, I don't know, till we get, I don't know,
A Moses.
Moses, yes, to like work on our people and the mentality gets to change. Perhaps then we shall see things different and we shall appreciate and see these things being practically handled. But as Amuntu Wawazi is down there looking at Ugandans and our leaders we have, we still feel, yes, it is good, but it may still help some top highlighted people. But if the right thing is to be done, if we are to have the principle kind of like things implemented and done, then we believe there is a positive bit, and even though corruption is there, perhaps if principle is allowed to come in, principle can beat the corruption and we can have proper systems. But before that is really worked on, we still feel like we're moving in circles, and you'll just be kind of like, things that change form. It is one thing, but now in a different format, different clothes, but same individuals. Yeah.
Okay, let's hope that on this panel, we have a Moses that will one day take us to the promised land, and we are in a better Uganda.
The rest, how worries.
Possibly it's you, Nyombi, because you're very optimistic. Let's hope so. My brother Baluku, lack of awareness. Ugandans are highly illiterate. People don't like reading. How are we going to address that issue? There's this, few people know about this.
Oh, yeah.
Few people know about the competition bill, the competition law that is yet to come, and even how it will help them. So the issue of lack of awareness, it's a challenge that is going to affect the implementation of this bill.
So I think I'll first speak to this. I am also optimistic about this very law. I think if you carry out a cost-benefit analysis, the benefits really outweigh the costs.
The cost.
I want to speak it from this very sense. Guys, I am so tired of buying data. This MTN and Airtel data. It really gets so expensive.
It feels like they use it with us. It feels like we are sharing the data.
And this is a perfect result of this unfair sort of pricing or unfair sort of monopoly.
That's true.
Arising from this unfair competition. So really the costs of the implementation are there, but then the benefits could also really outweigh. They are really much, because if I go to buy something, we should be very honest. The high prices arise out of the result that there is a monopoly up there who sets the prices. Yeah. And if there is a monopoly out there, that means that smaller farms that have been producing goods at cheaper prices are going to be forced out. That means it's only higher prices that are going to remain. Yeah. So this is really detrimental to me, to the person who is down there. So if someone goes to a shop to buy something, however much they are aware or not aware, the prices are going to be the same regardless of whether they are aware of the law or not aware of the law. So I think it is a better thing to go ahead with the implementation of this law. yeah, to even if it's an independent body that we can create to oversee its implementation,
Yeah.
well and good. Let's go with that, because you can never find a perfect system. Even dictatorial regimes, whenever they bring up, I'll give an example of the NRM. It's a dictatorial regime. It brought what we call PLE. Eh? So in in the inception bit of it, people would come out and say, but what is the implementation bit of PL? Is it called
PDM.
No, not PDM. There is that
Universal
free
primary
education.
education.
Universal primary education. Eh?
UPE.
Yes, UPE. So someone could come out in its inception to say, but what is going to be the implementation of UPE? Aren't people going to be corrupt and so on? But then the benefits of UPE really outweigh whatever the costs could be.
I really don't want to go into that
Oh, yeah.
aspect of UPE.
Because
Speaking of quality,
we can always talk about the quality later on.
Yeah.
But there is the fact that
there's access to education.
Yeah.
yes, people are going to school. So
The bare minimum.
the bare minimum. Eh? So, however,
Below bare minimum.
however, because I've seen whereby people bring policies. For example, the PDM. Because I've talked to so many people down there in Abim, northern Uganda, they tell me the spirit within which they see PDM. They say this is a campaigning tool for the president, but then he's giving money he's giving them money to start businesses, capital. So I think there is always a silver lining, sort of. So
you can always have the conversation of, are we actually doing it the right way? It's a good idea. At the end, it's a good idea, and it's perfect. It's perfect for eradicating poverty, but the implementers of the idea.
So I think if we follow the guidelines as they are put, well and good, it will come to fruition.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. We have spoken about these challenges, and we have lamented, we have cried. But we have one Moses here who is still optimistic. So I will begin with you, Mr. Nyombi. Way forward. What do we need to do to possibly address these challenges to implement? For example, I asked you about, my question to you, the challenge that I gave you was on the issue of the political interference. So how are we going to address the aspect of political interference way forward?
I think all our worries have been addressed from the committee report and recommendations, because the bill in itself had some gaps. She was talking about, I think we all talked about political interference. Like I said earlier, in the bill, they were their suggestions that it should be the minister who is supposed to appoint the technical committee that's going to oversee or administer all these acts, all these sections, to see to it that there is fair competition in the country. But now the committee suggests, the committee is like, please, if the minister is appointed by the president, and as you all know, our ministers are involved in businesses, many different things that they're involved in. Now, the same person, if you are saying is the one who's going to appoint a committee of some sort to oversee this, there will be conflict of interest. So the committee, the Trade Committee of Parliament, I think it's headed by Mr. Mpaka, recommended that let's have a statutory body in place. Like we are having now the Minister of the Ministry of Works. At the same time, you are having we're having UNRWA and even other bodies. You're having the Ministry of Health, you're having the National Drug Authority. Now, in this scenario here, you realize, well, like we said, maybe it is costly, but even these ministries are not only handling, in this particular case, the Ministry of Trade is not only looking at trade competition or unfairness. There are other things that it is mandated to do. And therefore, we can take away this burden from them. Let's have an independent body to be in charge of this specifically so that they do other things.
Okay.
You might find that competition in trade is just one of the many things that the ministry would have been overseeing. But if we take it away and have it only under a special body, like actually you realize even though the other countries are having this bill in place, at least for them, they put up these statutory bodies in place. And in our case, when they were proposing the bill, they did not talk about any statutory body in place. So that in one way or the other, well, there is corruption, but let's put these laws in place for future generations. Maybe if government changes and there are good people who will come,
Yeah.
they will have a place where to start from because there will be a good law. Good laws will be good laws, and even when they are misinterpreted or they are used to the contrary,
True, they remain good.
someday good people will come in government
That's
and they
someday.
implement these
Yeah.
good laws.
Okay,
Yes.
thank
But
you.
it's better than not having any.
Someday.
Yeah.
I like the optimism. I love the optimism. You speak about strengthening the legal framework. You speak about you not only speak about strengthening the legal framework, but also bring out the idea that we need to have an independent body that is appointed by the minister on technical grounds as opposed to handle that matter. That is your way forward. Thank you. Belinda, the question of corruption is something that cuts across.
True.
And it will affect the implementation process of this particular good law that is for the people. What way forward do you think we need to implement to address this vice that has terribly eaten up our society?
Well, corruption has been in place. It is still in place, but we are fighting it. I'd like to say, hands are not down. There are people, we Ugandans, some of us, most of us probably, are rising up to fight the vice corruption. So, one, what would I say? How do we deal with the corruption bit of it? Let the good-willed people still stand up. Let us put systems that try to reduce corruption in these systems of governance and etc. Can we have these structures that try to cut down corruption? If it's probably emphasize the bureaucracy, probably what if they still have those measures that can try to create some bit of transparency in implementation of such a good idea, then let them be put. And then on the other hand, back to, I just don't know, but back to we, the Ugandans, back to our leaders, back to the people who are probably going to be part of this implementation. Can each one yearn for a nation which is transformed and better? I know it might be very hard for someone to say, I'm still earning from, it is for God and my stomach and no longer for my country. But can we come back to the patriotic sense of it and say, this is to save Uganda, this is to boost economy, this is for us to get better services? So can we try to reduce Mpola, then finally, as we talk to the good people will come on board and take up this Uganda with the good laws and do better things. Hope is not yet lost. We have not yet lost all the hope, but we are still crying and lamenting and saying we need to see change brought on board. But we need concerted effort, everybody. If it means us having more committees that come out to, look through these things and try to pinpoint each and everything, let us have them for transparency. Let there be accountability measures that come through and bring back the accountability to the people. And also still on corruption, can we have, I'm not trying to set Ugandans up to that person at the base understand this idea, because the reason why some corrupt people thrive is because we do not understand these things. They're just in some written probably on paintings, and like some things are far away from our understanding, and so it creates leeway for these people to continue and use that to their benefit and cheat us on the other side. So if people can understand more of these things, come out, hold them accountable on things they understand and know how systems should be operating, perhaps even the corruption can be reduced.
I love the optimism these young people have. A few weeks ago, totally unrelated. A few weeks ago, like a few months back, we had the iron sheet scandal.
Mm.
And a few weeks ago, the DPP, um, Honorable Jane Francis Abodo, dropped charges on the suspects, the accused
70.
ministers and people that were, accused of the corruption scandal. But nonetheless, we're still optimistic.
We keep the fire and zeal for Uganda
We're still
burning.
optimistic nonetheless. Let's hope that our generation does better. That's really what I hope for. When I see young people already at this stage already engaging in corruption scandals, it bleeds my heart. Let's spread the word and fight the corruption. But look, lack of awareness. That is something that we as Ugandans, we don't like reading one. Even though we have, even though there is TV nowadays, there's technology, the internet penetration is still low. The access to information is still low. How are we going to address the issue of lack of awareness?
Okay, so I first want to talk about what they've been talking about. For example, I really want us to look at this in terms of the delivery and implementation of the law. For example, you talk about big issues like corruption, but I first want us to look at the nitty-gritties of the implementation. For example, I've seen in that report that one of the factors that they're going to use to determine that one company has a dominant market share. For example, they will say that if a company has 35% and above of the market share in the whole country, then that qualifies it to be one of a dominant position. But then another person was saying that this is something that was benchmarked from another country, and brought here without first carrying out, say, a survey of Uganda to see in our very context of Uganda, which would be a dominant position. Okay, what market share would qualify any company to be of a dominant position? So I think some of those they might look very small, but I think those are the first issues that we first have to tackle. The delivery part of it, those small issues. How are we going to deliver the law? For example, in that very sense of determining the market share, let's carry out a survey around the whole country so that we tailor our law and everything to our own context here in Uganda. Yes, before we can even go to the very big issues of it. So for me, the issue is about, those small issues that everyone might tend to overlook, but then they mean a lot. But then back to what you talk about, the issue of awareness. So I think this comes back to the issue of civic competence. People are not civically aware. They don't even want to know about political issues. They don't want to read. So I think this is okay, this must be personal efforts of people, and then also, say, civil societies to create that sort of awareness among people. Tell them about the functions of, say, bodies that are put in place. Let's say if someone has experienced any unfair, where can they go to report this? Yeah, so I think
civic enlightenment.
Yes, civic education, for example, by civil society organization, that can be, and they've been trying to do that.
Yes,
yeah, so I think also political leaders could do a good job by sensitizing people and all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I still have to say this again. You see, we have a very good legal framework as a country. Uganda's legal framework, from human rights to economic rights to social, all of it, all the laws that we have that encompass all those areas are very good laws. But at the end of the day, the issue is implementation. That's the problem. That's the problem. And I think what tops the chart in terms of the challenges that we face in implementing are two things. One, we corrupt even the little resources that we have. So for us to move forward, in my humble opinion, I think the best way for us to implement such laws is one, fight the vices of corruption that we have, but then two, put the resources that we have in proper use. So that calls for proper prioritization when it comes to terms of implementation of this. I think when we do that, we are on course to implementing and having a better Uganda. Other than that, we shall be on the same path of lamenting tragedy and poverty. So thank you. So let me begin with you, Haruna. Your concluding remarks and what you think we need to do as a country, possibly in line to what we've discussed today.
Thank you so much, Drake. I'm going to retaliate what I said, what we were discussing. I think the political question doctrine, we are going to have all these laws in place, but how far are we willing, especially on the leadership, those in the leadership positions, those in positions of governance,
the political will.
So we need the political will in terms of implementing this, administering these laws. Secondly, let's try to adopt the recommendations from the Committee of Trade. It's going to address all our worries as far as this bill is concerned. Like I said, there were some few problems within the bill, but the Trade Committee tried to bring several people, stakeholders on board, and inquired from them what they wished to have implemented or included in the bill. So let's take all those recommendations as important, include them in the bill, then pass it. I'm very sure Ugandans will be the happiest. The consumers, right from those ones who are just starting up, will develop innovation. Basically, the economy is going to thrive. We are going to have a better economy if we are having this bill passed. But after the recommendations have been adopted, because they are very, very, very good recommendations. Finally, like for instance, you were worried about the money that's going to be used. The bill recommended that there are some funds that we remit to some regional bodies, and those funds are shared, especially in terms if there were unfair practices. So fines, penalties that have been given, those monies that are recovered from such things, they are remitted to the countries. And so we can start up with those monies that have been given to us to fund the bodies that are in place. And so let's take the recommendations of the committee to be very important. Adopt them, then the bill will be very important.
I would want to ask, it's just a rhetoric, the question of sustainability. We may have that, but is it sustainable? Anyway, that's a topic we shall have another day. Belinda.
My parting shots or last remarks would be, as we are thinking of all these brilliant and good ideas for Uganda's economy, for the typical Ugandan everywhere we are, as we bring them forth or as they are brought forth, can we fight to see that they reach like their major goals or the goals they stipulate? Can this regime be remembered, or this lot of leaders be remembered for starting on something and watching it go to the end and being fulfilled? Like for these remaining years they have, I'd like to throw it to them as a task. You present so wonderful. I enjoyed the argument, they put on the floor. But can we sustain that energy to the end? Can you make sure that as you've brought it forth, you're standing with the Ugandans from inception and making sure that this bill comes into law and the law really benefits the people it's supposed to benefit, and the goals that you set out from the word go are fully achieved? That is what I would say. And to the people, can we, I'll always say, can we pick interest in these things? They're here to help us. Can we get to know more about it so that we work with government, work with government work with us. Let us have some achievements. We can stand on and say, in this regime, in this time, this was started, and here it is. It is thriving, and Yes, we are seeing success stories.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Baluku.
Thank you. Yeah. So I also think this is a very good law, but I want us to, like the policymakers, to focus more on the delivery part of it. Say, for example, how are you going to determine mergers? How are you going to determine the monopolies? Yeah. So those really look like small, but then at the end they have a very big impact on what is going to happen. So I think it is a good law. It will help consumers and also producers, because it will create a leveled ground for all economic players to, to come and engage, and then everyone will move out happily. Yeah, so that's
Thank you. Thank you very much. There you have had it from our wonderful panel today. I've been joined by Mr. Haruna Nyombi from Islamic University in Uganda, Miss Amanya Belinda from Gulu University, Mr. Baluku Derek, an alumni of Makerere University. Thank you very much for breaking down or making sense of the competitive bill or competitive amendment bill 2023 that is yet to be assented into law. It has been very nice having you guys on today's panel, and I enjoyed the conversation.
Sure.
Hopefully next time when we invite you also on our invitation. Otherwise, thank you to Center for Constitutional Governance for giving young people a platform, and thank you to Civic Space TV for making this possible. And my final appreciation goes to the technical crew, Rashid and crew. Thank you for making this happen, and kindly subscribe and continue watching. See you again next week, same time, same place. Take care.